All right, welcome. We're going to get started. This is our last track for the day, Construction Institute track. My name is Nala Williams. I'm the president of the CI chapter for the Dallas branch, also the treasurer for Dallas. So thank you guys for joining us today. It's been a great day so far. So next up, we're going to have another awesome presentation. We'll have Toby Flinn here. He has 30 years of experience in construction engineering, specializing in leading program teams in both the vertical and horizontal markets for private, public, and non-governmental organization clients. Outside of the United States, he has worked and lived in the Middle East, Asia, Europe, and Central America. And Toby is a San Antonio native with deep roots in Central Texas. So he's got a panel of people here that he'll introduce, but let's give him our attention as we discuss City of Sherman Infrastructure Improvements Program.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you all for being here. Thanks. I guess it's good to get an applaud now because you might not like it at the end, and so we will take it now. I'd first like to introduce our guest, which will really be giving the heart of the discussion today. I'm going to start off with Wayne Lee here with the City of Sherman. He's the Director of Engineering at City of Sherman and has really been one of our advocates as we support the City of Sherman through program management to execute their CIP. Next is Hugh Brightwell. He is a Vice President of Construction Management at Pape-Dawson. And we have Ron Mick here with +6 Engineering. It kind of supports us as one of our senior engineering and construction as part of the CMI team. Okay. All right. So starting off, I'm going to stand for a little bit. I think we'll probably transition between sitting and standing. But the overall kind of theme of this is we want this to be a discussion. And that's going to be really how we've run this program is through collaborative spirit. Okay. So a lot of discussions. We've had a lot of heated discussions on this entire CIP, both with the clients, both with our peers, left, right, up, down, everywhere. So multi-echelon conversations with people. You know, really what our mission was here to do for the City of Sherman was to provide high quality infrastructure. And we did that through a very collaborative culture. When I say high quality, we really looked at high quality in two components, which is one is the product, which is really kind of the stuff you see on the map here. And really the question to that is, does it work? So when we get done executing the CIP, does it work? Like we all have to ask ourselves, does the product work? Well, not where the design's great, not where you're really nice, not did you bring coffee and donuts to your client, but does the product work? If we can't answer that question with a yes at the end, then we really didn't do our job, okay? The next part of high quality is in relationships. And this really gets into the collaborative spirit here. And with relationships, it's are you building and maintaining authentic relationships with your client, your peers, your subcontractors, your contractors, your teammates, and also your family at home. So those two things are really important as part of high quality. Now, for the brief, I'm going to give you some of the stuff that's going to satisfy your hunger as an engineer. We're going to talk about some of the projects, and we're going to go through some pictures as well. But what I'd like to do is set the stage to kind of show you the magnitude of what Sherman was facing. And I'm going to do that through just telling you factual what the projects are, how much they were worth roughly, and then kind of how the team was arrayed. Wayne here is going to talk about how they came to decide that they even needed some help to execute the CIP, okay? Then Ron and Hugh are going to really give the heart of the message here and talk about how we did it and how we are continuing to do it and how we will do it elsewhere. Now, this is a different discussion for a lot of engineers because words like CMAR, design build, we all have mixed emotions about that. But I will tell you that us at Pape-Dawson, we are a firm believer in collaborative delivery. Now, that doesn't mean it has to be CMAR. It doesn't have to be design build. It could be a CSP. It could be a hard bid, low bid job, but you still need to develop and maintain a collaborative spirit. That's where the industry's going. We've all done it the hard way for so many years and have been so disgruntled. Many have left the industry because of it. Many of us grew up in the hard bid world. It's a tough environment. And so what we have found is this is the way we are going, and we are not looking back. Now, we're fortunate. We have some really good organizations out there that are helping us kind of set the doctrine, also be kind of schools of thought. One of them is the Water Collaborative Delivery Association. They have really helped us, meaning the entire industry, set the tone, kind of show us what like right looks like. So best practices, templates, go-bys, to use kind of a TxDOT word. And so we're very thankful for those organizations and the leadership and all those people who work in these organizations, whether it's the Design Build Institute or WCDA. They all come from our industry. They all came up through the hard bid, rough world, and they all decided we're going to devote our lives now to going at this a better way. Okay, so starting off with the project for the orientation is we start up at Lake Texoma, and we are currently now bringing water all the way down to a water treatment plant in the city of Sherman. It's getting processed. It's coming down through a 36-inch line. These are all new projects. And then going to support industry over here to the east and to the west of this 36-inch line. Some big names are Global Wafers and Texas Instruments. So again, big players using lots of water. So like manufacturing chips, and a lot of them. You know, some of the biggest chip manufacturing places in the world now will be in the city of Sherman. And also industry like Tyson, Sunny Delight, all of those industries use a lot of water too. Now, when you bring down water, you supply water, well, you also have water waste. So there's earthen channels, they're sending water back ultimately up to the Lake Texoma. And there's also treating that water over here. So you can be sending the water that comes from industry back into the system. Now, why did the city of Sherman do this? Well, the city of Sherman is a very popular place right now. You know, I think it's named, what is the Silicon Valley of the Prairie, right? Or the Silicon Prairie. So it's getting a lot of attention, both politically, you know, inside the state of Texas, but internationally. So TI had really two choices when they came down to it. Just like I believe it was Singapore and Sherman. Now they already had a smaller factory in the city of Sherman existing. So they already had relationships set there, but Singapore was also very attractive to them. Well, they ultimately picked the city of Sherman. And that was a big win for Texas and honestly, the entire United States. Okay. So this is a rough project orientation. We'll go into some pictures of what all of these sites look like. Obviously, there's not much to show on that 36-inch line, but we have some pictures. There's a neat piece of the earthen channel coming from the water treatment plant that's sending all of the kind of the effluent from the water treatment plant, all of the backwash going back into the system, and it'll naturally settle out along a 2-mile stretch of earthen channel. And then the wastewater treatment plant is really the kind of the peak project of this entire program, just because of its complexity, the timeline. I'm going to let Ron and Hugh talk about like really how we're pulling that off. It'll probably set a record in Texas in terms of how fast it happened, the quality of it, the safety of it, and the collaboration. Okay, let's go to the next slide, Ron. Okay, Ron, I'm going to let Ron talk about the schedule of the kind of the primary drivers of the projects right now. Ron?
That's if you can hear me. So overall, there's a handful of projects, right? And City of Sherman started in early 2022, identifying, hey, we got to do something to upgrade our infrastructure for all this industry, right? So what the slide shows is everything in dark blue is design phase, and then the next shade down is procurement, and that can be anything from equipment procurement to contractor procurement, all different types, and then we go into construction phase, right? So the big project I've been mostly involved with is this one, the wastewater treatment plant, which was, you can see design started much later than everything else, and that's driven by, there was a wastewater treatment plant master plan and a treatability study. The city has an existing wastewater treatment plant, and the initial thought was upgrades to that plant could handle the wastewater. Some wonderful, smart process engineers did some calculations and figured out that's probably not going to work. So we need to build a new wastewater treatment plant, but we're already 6 months into a 3-year program. So they started design and almost immediately hired a CMAR to start procuring and getting it started. So that really, CMAR came on at about 10% design level. Normally it would be 30 to 60% design level. And the CMAR started bidding out projects, actual work packages at 60% design level. And then we had to up rev all the design. So it was really a progressive design build project with a contract mechanism of CMAR. It's pretty challenging. So, but that's not the only one. The water treatment plant started procurement really early. The 36-inch water main, it was another CMAR project. And a big part of that was we need to order pipe early. So CMAR came on, they ordered pipe while they were still working on getting real estate done. And I would say overall in the schedule, 2022 until pretty much the end of 2025. So 4 years to go from zero to complete. This overall program, I think a normal schedule for a program like this, if you were to go a traditional route, would be maybe 6 to 10 years. The whole thing's compressed into 4. So the schedule, it's a big program, but it's not the biggest program. The schedule is the compression that makes it the unique challenge that we see in front of us, right? All right, that's what I had to say about
Great.
it.
Thanks. I'm going to turn over to Wayne now to talk about the city of Sherman, what they face with. So when you look at this, and you can see the number of projects, where they are in design, when they're going to go to construction, procurement. So the city of Sherman goes, how do I manage this? So Wayne's going to talk about that.
Just leave that slide up. Yeah, just leave that up. So my name is Wayne Lee, Director of Engineering, City of Sherman, and I've spent about 29 years at the City of Irving, retired from there, decided to take a job in a nice, quiet, rural city in far north Texas, get out of the rat race and hustle and bustle of the Metroplex. And so when I showed up about 2019, 2020, that time frame, the annual CIP for the city of Sherman, utilities, roadways, everything was roughly around 20 million a year. Late in 2020, Texas Instruments showed up, knocked on our door, said, hey, we're thinking about building our next 300 millimeter fabrication facilities, either in Singapore or Sherman. Can you support us? So immediately, staff, we started analyzing what kind of infrastructure would be needed to support these potential 4 fabrication facilities at the TI campus, which the initial projections we were getting would probably double the water and wastewater use of the entire city. Ultimately, we sat down, and this is early 2021, we came up with about $750 million in estimated project costs that ranged from capacity improvements out at the Lake Texoma pump station that I have a 20% share with North Texas on, capacity improvements out at our water treatment plant, initially a 36-inch water main that just happens to have to run from the far north end of Sherman, where the water treatment plant is, to the far south end of Sherman, where TI is located at. And probably we'll have to parallel that line as these industries expand their facilities over the next few years. We have a 750,000 gallon elevated tank out by TI. That's going to be upgraded to a 2 million gallon tank. Of course, there are some decent sized wastewater mains already out at this facility for the existing TI campus, for another semiconductor company, Coherent. But with these 4 fabs, that'll have to be increased in size. We felt like we probably had plenty of capacity at the wastewater treatment plant for the short term, but we're going to have to expand it. We might have to make some improvements to it. So we had a treatability and master plan study done on that, as Ron was talking about. And so rolls around about November 2021, Texas Instruments does announce they're coming to Sherman. So the next month, I send out an invite to 7 different firms to provide their qualifications. And these firms, we had already kind of talked over the course of the year with different firms, whether they ever been a CMAR lead on projects, because a lot of these might be CMAR related. And so these 7 firms we invited in, they've been CMAR leads in the past on projects, and asked them to bring in their qualifications in January 2022 on any or all of these $750 million worth of projects. I mean, in addition, there was one, Shepherd Drive. The existing TI facility fronts I-75. They're building on 200 acres behind that facility. This new fab faces Shepherd Drive. It was a little quaint country 2-lane asphalt road that now has to be expanded to a 4-lane divided from 75 to in front of their facility. Our initial take, though, was we have a utility engineer on staff, lots of years of experience with utilities, facilities of water treatment, wastewater treatment. This was going to be his full-time job, managing this major infrastructure. We'd take one of our existing engineers, let him take care of the day-to-day utility minutia and projects that Tom was involved in, and probably hire another engineer or two to help with all the development that's now springing up. When we interviewed the 7 firms, every one of them came in to some degree and said, you're going to need a program manager for this scale of work in this short a time. You're not going to be able to do this in-house. And they'd give a brief summary of what they might be able to provide us as a program manager. Well, we selected 3 of these firms to help with the design of most of these projects. And then we took their advice. We probably need a program manager to handle all of this. And so we asked 3 of those firms, 2 of which didn't get any of this design work initially, and had them come in, do in-depth interview and presentation on their qualifications to be our program manager. Ultimately, we selected Pape-Dawson to provide those services for us. The initial contract with them was for a little over 32,500 hours of service. That Pape-Dawson estimated would carry us about 2 years. I think it carried us close to 2.5, but that's still almost 7.5 full-time employees, basically dedicated over 2.5 years. Probably a little bit more than our utility engineer could have provided in services. So that was a very wise choice. This past September, we extended that contract for another 13,400 hours to help us, wrap a bunch of these phase 1 projects up. In the meantime, during 2022, Global Wafers approaches us. They're a semiconductor company as well. They're proposing to build either in Ohio or in Sherman their first silicon wafer manufacturing plant in the United States. About a $5 billion project. Really small compared to the $30 billion that TI is proposing. About May 2022, TI ground breaks their project. June, Global Wafers announces, yes, we've selected Sherman. And then later that year in December, Global Wafers breaks ground. So after the past 3 years, we've had a lot of flexibility, pivoting on projects, depending on what kind of schedules of the phasing of the TI and Global Wafer projects are, what kind of water they plan to use, what kind of wastewater they're going to send, the constituents in that wastewater, and the inflationary costs of CIP projects, as you may be aware of, since 2021 and that initial estimate of costs, we've seen a huge inflationary cost in projects, and especially in water treatment, wastewater treatment, we've seen a 4- to 5-fold increase in those costs. For example, the water treatment plant, initially we thought that was going to be our challenge, is providing enough water, so we embarked on expanding that. We had an existing UFRO plant commissioned in 2020 that could treat 10 million gallons a day. The building had enough capacity to plug in another 5 MGD. We had an existing 30-year-old EDR conventional plant on site. It originally could treat 10 MGD. It could only treat about 7.5 because of failing parts and systems. So our initial thought was we'll decommission that. We'll build a second UFRO plant and facilities on the campus that will ultimately be able to treat another 30 MGD. We'll plug in 10 to 15 into it to begin with. Well, as these costs for treatment went up, this water treatment plant turned around from a $80 million initial estimate to approaching $300 million in cost. Our treatability study proved out that our existing wastewater plant could not handle the constituents coming at it from the TI plant. We'd have to build a whole new south plant from the existing plant that is a membrane plant treatment. That project, we were thinking of expanding the project at a much later date and time. We were estimating $60 million. It was approaching $300 million. So for budgetary purposes, this little town of Sherman pivoted and told the engineer working on the water treatment plant expansion, finish those plans for that 30 MGD building, but we're going to rehab and renew the entire EDR plant back to its 10 MGD capability to extend its life, delay the building of this 30 MGD plant. And that rehabs, I think, about $40–50 million in cost. We even have our in-house crews, switching out the filter system on that for savings. With that, I'll turn it back over to Toby.
Thanks, Wayne. I'll shake your hand.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Okay, so thank you for that, Wayne. Yeah, go. One of the things Wayne said, and I hope you pick up on it, was they had to pivot, not just pivot money and like priorities projects, but like their psychology, like how they were going to actually do this, like what sort of contract mechanisms they were going to do, their approach to everything, like everything had to pivot. And although like City of Sherman has some outstanding engineers, they are incredibly capable. From the city manager, well, from the council to the city manager, mayor down, all very knowledgeable, all very supportive and very, very engaged in this entire process. But there's just a manpower issue here. There's literally a manpower and a leadership like deficit that you can't get to manage this. Now this slide looks kind of normal. Like it doesn't even look that really impressive. Okay, so City Sherman's up there and you've got Pape-Dawson here, the program manager, and we're kind of helping with construction and we're helping with some design consultants. We're helping to kind of drive the process and, shape the environment when we so the client can make good decisions when we kind of hit a point where we can't drive the process. That's kind of two of our primary missions on the program. This doesn't look that impressive. It's kind of like, okay, yeah, got it. They probably needed some help and you hired some folks and they did some document control and maybe they did some pay apps. Great. Now go next slide, Ron. This is what it really looked like on the ground. So they went from none of these teams here, none of these design and construction teams, none of this money here, right? So from their normal CIP, which is Wayne, that like he didn't say this, but they also had to manage their CIP that they have like for the sidewalks, for the sewers, like all that was still going on in the background of this. And I shouldn't say background, it was important for the community. In fact, the community probably cared more about that stuff than this, because that stuff affected their everyday life. So this is what the city of Sherman was faced with. Just, oh my gosh, I have to manage this. We can't do this alone. We need partners. And so this is really where the program comes in to help drive the process, both in management, leadership, but as Ron and Hugh are going to talk about, probably the more interesting part of this conversation is like, how do they pull it off? Like, how do you actually do it day to day? I mean, there's one thing about the administrative piece that's kind of easy to describe, but like the philosophy of how you're going to engage all of these partners, when everybody's challenged, right? Both manpower, budgetary, everything across the board. And Sherman is not like remote, but it's just far enough from some of the DFW complex that already has challenges of like resourcing. It's just far enough to make it a little bit more challenging. So all the contractors had challenges too, and are still having challenges with the manpower. So, you know, they went from managing their normal CIP to managing virtually almost $1 billion of CIP that needs to be completed in anywhere between 2 to 3 years. $1 billion, like that's a lot. Again, on top of everything they're doing in the background. Okay, here's just a list of all of the projects just to kind of give you some context of the size. Obviously, the wastewater treatment here actually came in a lot lower than that, and that's one of the kind of through the negotiations, through converting from a GMP to a lump sum, which Ron will talk about. But again, all of this is the collaborative spirit. And to be collaborative, you have to be somewhat vulnerable. You have to come to the table and compromise. Everybody needs to know that when you do collaborative delivery. You're coming to the table and everybody needs to realize, I'm vulnerable, you're vulnerable, let's make a deal. It really comes down to that. Let's go to the next slide. All right, another part of this was easement acquisition. So on top of doing the program, design, construction, like acquiring all this land primarily for the 36-inch line, right? Because it went the furthest distance. There's a lot of ranch owners throughout this entire area that are very tied and connected to the city of Sherman. So this was a very delicate process. This was kind of a process that was managed really through 3 different entities. One, the city of Sherman, and then 2 firms kind of helped assist them in acquiring those easements. So this just added another piece of friction to the entire table. But again, going at it with a collaborative mindset, it's the best way to get there. It's really the only way to get there. So we can go next slide. I think next is going to be, okay, this is kind of where we are in terms of, are we off plan? Are we trending off plan? Are we on plan? The ones that are trending off plan, there's really only a couple. Really, those were projects that the city of Sherman decided, hey, I need to prioritize some of these. And there's some other things in the background that we're working with other partners that might support us. And maybe that project isn't needed at this time. So when you see trending off plan right here, it doesn't mean that's going south. It just means that we actually completed the design, and we're going to shelf it for a bit and revisit it probably next year. Let's go next slide. And then this is on the construction side. So again, all trending on plan. So far, and a lot of it's, again, through the negotiation processes with the contractor, right? So we really got to work with them throughout the duration of the project before we really finalize the contracts or conversions from a GMP to a lump sum. Next slide, Ron, thank you. Okay, I'm gonna let Ron and Hugh tag team really the rest of this brief. So they're gonna get to one of the last slides. And I'm just gonna kind of prepare you now. I want this to be a conversation. They're going to talk about what they see as like a must-have in today's projects, whether it's transportation, whether it's vertical or water wastewater. I'm going to let them talk about some of the pictures, and then we'll kind of finish up with the last slide. Ron, Hugh.
Thanks. So, I don't know, for my part of the project, I've been working mostly on this. This is the wastewater treatment plant. And let's see, got involved in this in about July of 2023, about the time they said we need to get the CMAR. So we put together a package and we advertised for CMAR. The design level was at about 10% design at that point, right? Lucky for the project, the picture on the left is October of 2023. The city already owned this property, and you can see it's a nice terraced, it was a hayfield, right? The existing wastewater treatment plant is just off of the picture to the left there. That's to the north of the job site. And then a year later, remember, October of 2023, 30% design, just hired a CMAR. A year later, we've got a giant tank, the bioreactor basin, blower building, MBR facility, sludge storage tank, the influent pump station, the preliminary treatment unit. So all the major design elements, all the major treatment elements are well into construction 1 year from the date that a CMAR was hired. Right? And recall, designed at 30%, designs at 100%, and construction's at 50%. When I started on the job, everybody said, you can't do that. You can't do that. How are you going to do that? You can't even order electrical gear in that much time. If we knew what we needed, we couldn't get it done. But everybody involved said, well, we think we can do it. Let's try. Right? Even we hired the CMAR in their interview. They said, we don't know if we can meet your schedule, but we're going to try. And guess what? We're on track. Do you want to go into some of the contract stuff we did to make it work?
How many of y'all in here have done collaborative delivery? CMAR, progressive design build, design build. Okay. If you've done it, have you done it in the water space? Okay, so it's pretty new to Texas. The actual truth is, no, it's not. It's not that new, but Texas is slow. So collaborative delivery has been allowed under Texas statute for 25 plus years in the water code. Basically, it's limited for design build to entities that are 100,000 people or more, which Sherman is not. I got involved when I came to Pape-Dawson. I came out of the general contracting side. And I'd done progressive design build and CMAR on the water side. When I came involved, they had just gotten the CMAR launched. They were somewhere around 30%-ish. From the contractor side, it was not really 30%. And basically the contractor and the city and Ron and I and the engineers, we had to get together and decide, hey, if we're going to deliver this thing in like 24 months, how are we going to do that? And the answer was we needed to take a CMAR, a construction manager at risk contracting method, which the city is allowed to do because they have less than 100,000 people, and then collaboratively agree that we're going to do it as a progressive design build, which means we're going to be putting out early works packages way in advance of finishing the design. So when Ron talks about the speed of this, the thing to remember from the engineering side is they designed this from basically 0 to nothing in 6 months. Basically, this is a 4 MGD plant. It's probably a little more than that because a good part of it is built for the next phase. And so the contractor and the engineers with their partners, because they had to have subs to be able to do it, we basically collaborative or basically did a progressive design build where the contractor and us and the engineer and the city decided on a schedule to make it work, and we decided on the packages so we could phase the work, and that included pre-procurement, setting up some of the design parameters, and then the early works packages of what we could start, and then actually start bidding those out. So we were actually building this in 6 months less. Nobody?
So just for perspective,
All right.
design took 6 months, 0 to 100%. The normal design phase for a project of this magnitude would be 2.5 years.
All right.
It went from 0 to 100%, and usually it's like the highway projects. You go up, design review, redesign. Everybody's got an input. These guys, the design team, took it all. And they had a CMAR breathing down their neck going, give me, I need those drawings, I need them. And they got it all done in 6 months. We realized at the time, we're probably going to see some changes because we designed so fast. And we have seen a few, but really not that bad. They really, the designers nailed it in 6 months.
Yep. So the biggest thing to realize is that while all this is going on, there's permitting going on, right? So we can't forget that. So the good thing was the city had some of that in hand, and we didn't have to do anything but get an amendment to the permit, which was good, but it was still going on, and we could only build a certain amount of it. And then we had to finish it. We might have to make sure that the permit's in place before we do the final discharge. So we're working on that. And again, this is an industrial permit. This is not a standard old TCQ. This is an industrial permit. So they've got air permitting requirements as well as discharge. Right. Well, a couple of things that we're doing as well as we partner. It's on the back slide, but one thing we did is we got together and we had partnering sessions. None of y'all has done partnering before. I can tell you that I've done them off and on over the years. I think the ones we've done, and part of this is the culture that the city of Sherman has as a client and the owner, is they were already collaborative, but when we got into these partnering sessions, we've really cleared the air. And we're doing these like every 3 months, quarterly. So I can tell you that they really clean some log jams, getting together on the site. We brought the engineers quarterly as well to come to the site. And then we also set up task force. So when you have a progressive design build or design build, usually the engineer and the contractor are contractually connected and they're sitting together. We weren't doing that. Nobody was really prepared to co-locate where you could get that exchange continually. But we implemented task meetings where we had task, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, concrete, civil, all the structural guys. So when you look at the work on a treatment plant, we're working in all divisions of work. We have paving, we have dirt, we have fences, we have site lighting, we have power distribution, we've got communication, we've got SCADA instrumentation and control. So we had task force meetings almost weekly, where we were working through them. Yeah. Our contractor brought BIM, so y'all are hearing BIM. I know BIM's starting to get more and more into the transportation side, but it's been crucial in us delivering this job between the engineer and the contractor to run BIM and then be able to find clashes, be able to start driving drawings periodically to packages to bid them out. And so those are just a few of the things we've done together. But I think the biggest thing to talk about on this job is we're going to deliver a job that in the budget originally was pretty low.
60 million.
Yeah. And came out right afterwards, and everything like is at least doubled in the water industry in cost since 20 or 21. And we were able to identify all the risk, build all the buckets for the allowances, and then agree on a lump sum. Basically, we agreed to a lump sum cost of 286, I think is about where we're at. And that's basically all in for a job to be built in 24 months. So that's a big part of this job. And again, right now we're on track. October, I think right there, we were around 50%. Right now, we're a few months later, we're sitting at almost 75% complete. We're going to put water in this thing in July. All right. And so that's going to be real critical that TI and Global Wafers need to discharge. So that was the biggest reason of turning this to a CMAR was the schedule was the overarching issue. And then the second thing was obviously price and working through that price and the risk.
So yeah, the next slide, back and forth. So this is October 2024. And January of this year, I don't know, I'm looking at this overall picture, it's exactly the same. Just can't see that much difference, but a lot of progress was made internal to the structures.
I think one thing to let you know is the CMAR we were at, they were able to interview is one of the biggest CMARs or one of the biggest contractors around. We got Kiewit for this job. Right now, we're somewhere around 300 craft on the site. There's 70 white collar people here managing all these packages. That includes supervision. And then we've got a staff of consultants, engineers, I'm going to say on site between Ron and I and the plumber guys, there's like 8 or 9 of us overseeing that along with the city staff. And then we've got operations that's involved. They've actually hired new people to come in and are with us every week in meetings. So there's a lot of effort to go in to deliver this job.
Collaboration is key. We've been collaborating from the start. We interviewed Kiewit. They said, we need the engineers to co-locate with us. Engineers said, well, we've got people in California, we got people in Arizona, we got people in Florida.
Right.
They can't all move here to do this design. So that's why we did the task forces. And Kiewit said, we need your design done by December so we can get these packages out. And Plummer, the lead engineer, they said, we'll do our best. We'll try. They got mostly to 60% design by December, and then they wrapped it up in another 3 months, so they had design complete by March. But he was flexible with the engineer that they could get what they could get when they could get it. They were able to collaborate and figure out what can we do with what we have. We knew, you don't need final design to start digging a hole. You need to know how deep you need to dig your hole, right? And there's a lot of time in digging in these projects.
We had one thing that. So,
Yeah.
When Kiewit came to the table and Plummer came to the table, remember Plummer was looking at this, the traditional design bid build initially. Like we switched to CMAR and they weren't philosophically there yet. And it wasn't their fault because that's not how they were set up initially. Kiewit came to the table, hired on CMAR. Plummer really had to switch gears really fast, right? And that's asking a lot of an engineer's like, I will not let you into my brain until my design is done. I don't even want to talk to you. But things like the table flipped and said, no, I need to get into your brain now. I don't care if it's wrong. I need to get in now. And so what I want y'all to learn from this is that we have walls that we think are up and we can't get over that wall until we get to a certain milestone. If you know what you're doing, you have to know what you're doing first. And you're flexible, you can tear down some walls that have existed in our industry for a very long time. As long as you know what you're doing and you have a team and you can build a team to do it.
Right. And I'd say the start of that was the city, right? The city said, guys, go get this thing done. And everybody's working to get it done. It's amazing to me how fast this has come to be and how collaborative everybody has worked together. And yeah, task forces, that's where these walls came down. People just ask, well, why not? Why can't we do that? What's stopping us? Right. And we just kept boring in on those questions until we got to an answer we could move with. And I don't know, any structural engineers here? Any anxiety to let a bid go out without having a complete design? Our structural engineer was high anxiety, right? But he worked through it and he knew I'm going to see the shop drawings. I'm going to get to see the rebar drawings. And he also knew that this is water bearing structures, right? So there's a different concrete spec.
Yeah, we had. Couldn't sit around and wait 28 days, water testing. We had to move it through between the contractor and the engineers. We figured out and collaborated with the local company that provided, and then we worked through all of our quality issues. We also did a lot of design assistance. It's a common practice, Mr. President. That's another thing that we did. Talking about rebar drawings, send them back. Let's go to the next one.
Ready? Yeah, I think the other projects.
So just to let you know, obviously, these are the two biggest campuses. This is why we're. Yeah, sure.
I think that's still kind of not really public information yet.
Yeah.
And that's another.
What are you going to do?
It goes back into the system and ultimately, find its way back to like next summer.
Well, the water treatment plant, yeah, it goes out.
Wastewater
It goes out to the lake, and the wastewater goes to.
There's an existing discharge from the original wastewater treatment plant. It's going to be combined with that, and that's how they could use the same permit they already had. So it's going to be discharged into the stream.
Yeah, there's a lot of on-site treatment.
Another challenge we've had, at least with wastewater plant, is these are industries with proprietary information. You can't just say, this is how many gallons, this is what's gonna be in, it's all kind of coded, and it's all, when are we gonna get it? Well, soon, right?
So even to let you know that somewhere around 30%, they were still changing up their constituents that they were letting out, the designers, of what this process was going to be. So this process actually solidified between 30 and 60% while we were building.
So as TI and Global Wafers, just a big increase coming down with $30 billion invested in insurance. That's a, I don't know, is that a hope they build over the city every time it's like, we're investing $30 billion.
36-inch line, this is another one. It's not as fancy of a CMAR as you think, but the biggest problem we had at the time was, can we get enough pipe to build 30 miles of 36-inch? That was a big challenge. And could you get it on the site, and could you get it into where you could get it in the ground and get it operation? So a big part of the CMAR for that was so right now, it was originally designed for just straight steel, AWWAC 206, and now it's precast concrete cylinder pipe because the contractor was able to go to the market and find out what was available and what was cost effective. And so basically we saved 3 or 4 million and saved the schedule. And then they bid out the packages, and they were able to work on 3 10-mile sections at the same time to meet the schedule. And so that one's still on site. And they were building this section while TI was working on the right, and Senecola was building Shepherd Drive in the middle, and we were building the 36-inch on the side to come into TI. So there's a lot of moving parts, like Toby's saying, between the program, the city and the program. We're all talking to all the contractors, all the stakeholders, and everybody all the time. Got next. So again, just an idea of what the concentrate disc. So this was a new one. They had no place to put their concentrate off the water plant. So Lake Texoma, if none of y'all understand why it has a great population of striped bass, is because it's briny, it's salty. So they have to get rid of the salt before you drink it. Well, the biggest problem in backwashing a water plant is you got to get rid of all the brine water. Well, they were putting into the sanitary sewer system, which was taking up capacity back to the wastewater plant. So between the designers and the city, they came up with a way that we can actually, with TCQ, discharge it into a serpentine ditch to drop out some of the salts and get it back to Lake Texoma. So this is going to increase their capacity, hopefully up to 10 MGD at the water plant, but also decrease needs at the wastewater plant by 10 MGD in the system.
You'll see that on the slide. The channel doesn't just come down.
No.
It zigzags.
So something really different. There'll probably be some presentations on it over the years. Not normal. So the biggest thing, understanding the meaning of collaboration. We were lucky that we came in with a client that already collaborates. Really tight group of people, great people. They know their area. They embraced us when we came in to try to help them. We're communicating daily, I'd say, not hourly sometimes. So we're really integrated in a staff extension to some extent. That's the way I like to see it. We're here, we're working with them every day, everybody. So that's a big part of it. Set and maintain the culture. Partnership meetings. We even make our progress meetings on our jobs that are not CMAR, collaborative delivery. We partner in those meetings. We use them as partnering meetings every month or every other week to make sure things are kept out and open and the things are handled. It's not just a dog and pony show to report status. We actually use them to overcome issues. I think that's a big part of the culture.
I think the culture, one of the things we provided either coaching or therapy sessions. People were frustrated. I had early in the design of the wastewater plant, early in the project, one of the lead design engineer called me and we talked for an hour. And she, at the end, she said, "Man, I'm just complaining a lot to you. I'm just venting out all these frustrations." And I said, "Well, If you ever got frustrations, call and vent to me. Let's not vent these all out to everybody. Let's get them all vented out, you know. And we'll see if there's real issues, then we take them to the team and we try and work through it, right? But that's something that the culture, you have to kind of help your team get through their frustrations, right? Because everything didn't go just smooth and perfect and everybody wasn't happy every day. But at the end, everybody's doing their job to get it done.
But and we're out there, let's take it, policy between the groups to make sure everybody's communicating. And they got issues, we elevate us. Integrated discipline approach, document control and information. Obviously, we've brought some stuff that could be scaled for the city for this program. So we're using some PIMS systems and some archival systems, and we set up at least a standard across the program. So when it's over, the city has access to everything. That's a big part of it, just getting everybody dialed in, workflows, things like that. So we can get change orders done. I love to do change orders. Getting pay apps through, so we did a $30 million pay app. Anybody done a $30 million pay app? Okay, so we did a $30 million pay app. The funding source goes, wow, we needed to know ahead of it. So when they said that, we said, well, we'll let you know prior to it every month how big a pay app's coming so they could get their finances ready. So that was the one. Trust. I think trust is the biggest thing in collaborative delivery, but in any project, whether it's design, bid, build, or otherwise, those relationships and trust are really important. I think if anything we need to do is everybody needs to work on relationship building and trust, because again, getting these projects built, they're not easy, from designing them, planning them, designing them to delivering them. That's the biggest thing. So getting back to trust is a huge issue. I'd like to say in one of our partner sessions, the one I said was, we brought 3 different diverse groups that weren't even ready to do a collaborative delivery, and we're in the process to deliver it in 24 months. And almost none of us knew each other before we started. A lot of work. Be adaptive, but not loose. I think Toby said it best. Being adaptive and finding a way and a path forward is a big issue. Again, whether it's a collaborative delivery project or it's design, bid, build, you're in it. Being adaptive really helps because we got to deliver these projects. Toby, you want to wrap it up?
Well, thank you, Wayne, Hugh, and Ron. You know, one of the subtle things of running a program like this, and I always tell our team this, there's a huge opportunity to underperform, because you can literally get the pay apps through for the city of Sherman. You can check the box. We did pay apps. We did change orders. We got the submittals through. But if you're not really driving the process on something like this, you're really not doing your job. And that's really the hard part. I mean, we all learned how to drive like the administration when we came into the industry. You know, some of us are maybe in the beginning, but if you've been 10, 15 years in, you know the drudgery of submittal reviews, of RFIs. That should just be part of like you start there. But to drive the process, it takes a lot of work. And then one of the things Hugh and Ron and I've kind of melded into, and I'm a former Marine and Ron's a former sailor, so we like to joke with each other a lot. And Hugh played football at A&M. So we all kind of came with this idea of, we kind of joke with each other a lot. We all know what teamwork is a lot, what it is like. But we all kind of filled a special role. So there's good cop, bad cop. You know, I mean, how many people are married here and have kids? Okay, you all know that like you have to, like, someone has to play a certain role, and then the other person has to come in and play the other role. Like, you just know that that's part of, like, and you don't always want to play that role, and maybe you weren't prepared for it, but somebody has to play a role. One person can't be the good cop and the bad cop all the time. So filling that role is really important from the program level, but also at the contractor level. I mean, I think Kiewit and Plummer did a really good job of that too. They had the big dogs come in to have the kind of hard conversations, and then we kept that separate from the project level, right? So some of that drama of high level stakes and money didn't kind of make its way down to the project level. So, you know, Ron was purposely left out of some meetings because he's really grinding it out daily with the design engineers and the contractors. So he doesn't need to get that kind of fogginess in his brain.
Yeah, I never felt left out.
Yeah, he never volunteered for it. Okay, so I'm going to pause now, and I don't know if we can take questions from the teams or not, but we're going to open it up for questions right now. You, sir.
The enrollment in the project, how will it fund?
There's a lot of creative funding with this project. It's sort of like you going to the mortgage company and saying, I have income to build a $300,000 home, but I found this $30 million home that I'll have money in 3 years to be able to pay the note. Just give me the loan. So it's through bonds. There's a organization in North Texas called Greater Texoma Utility Authority that secures bonding and funding for many cities up in North Texas, including Sherman. So I mean, the bonding is secured from GTUA for these projects. It's on the credit of Sherman to be able to pay it back. But a lot of this funding is delayed payment, not interest. Some of the initial funding from 3 years ago had a 3-year delay in payment until these plants come online and start using all that water and wastewater revenue so that we can make those payments.
Just impressed about the speed of what you guys did. Impressed.
Yeah, a lot of, I mean, you had a full head of hair 2 years ago. Yes, sir. Oh, yeah, same question? Okay.
On the funding, I think something that really aided the schedule was we did not get Texas Water Development Board funding because there's strings attached to that. There's a little bit more effort to get the funding, and it drives your schedule out, right? So the city went with the private bonds I don't know if that was not necessarily the driving reason, but it was an aid to the schedule.
And some of the projects did have TWDB funding.
Yeah, those that didn't require a really short time frame.
Yeah. Anything else? Yes.
On the contractor, the CMAR contractors do the same that Pape-Dawson did. If you guys analyze it internally in your department, the different projects that came out for different contractors and they have CMAR, can't they do the same program manager for the projects?
Oh, you mean, I think you might be asking the real question is, you have a CMAR and then they have scopes of work underneath that. And like, how did they manage that with their own staff or?
Right, manage that as a program manager and exclude you guys directly with the city. Did you guys assess that as part of putting everything to the program manager and have the general contractors CMAR method do the management for you guys?
Oh, so I think the question is, yeah, go ahead, you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, some of these projects, the delivery method was selected between the city and the program managers as to which projects needed the delivery method. When it came to CMAR, they went out straight to the CMAR. So we assisted as the OA, owner's advisor, which is part of our scope, to come up with the delivery method and the documents to advertise. And they used a 2-step process basically to qualify, and then to basically, it's not bidding, but the second step is interview with some costs allowed by the statute. So just to let y'all know, in the water code, there is requirements for CMAR to be at least 1 or 2-step in its qualifications based. There is some allowance for cost, but not for cost of the work. Things like fees, like contingency fees based on percentage, their overhead and profit fee can be negotiated or can be brought up in their cost, as well as their CMAR fee or their CM fee, pre-construction. So I hope that answers the question. But us as the program, us and the engineers are overseeing those CMARs as they go. Yeah. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah.
Did the private industry backstop I guess must have been a massive agreement with private industry to get them to, you guys to go out on a limb. I didn't go on a limb, they backstopped it, right?
You would think that. No, but I mean, you know, one thing, Texas Instruments usually does 99.9% of the time what they say they'll do. And so the buyers of the bonds knew that, and we got very good rates because of that, because they were certain that TI would use what they were predicting they would use, and that the bondholders would get paid back. So the question is, were there any issues with water rights to provide the water for these chip plants? So the city of Sherman has approximately 34 MGD water rights out at Lake Texoma, begin with. We also have a groundwater system, and about half the city is on the surface water, and about half the city is on the groundwater. We don't mix them except in emergency. The usage out of the existing wastewater treatment plant would usually only range about 4 to 10 MGD a day, you know, depending on, you know, winter, summer peak. And so we had plenty of water rights out at the lake to provide the demands for Texas Instruments. However, with the growth that the city is now experiencing, you know, those projections are we will need more rights. We are working on securing a 50% increase in those rights from another entity that doesn't need them anymore. And we're also looking at this effluent coming out of the wastewater treatment plant to make a request eventually to the TCEQ for reuse of that effluent from the water treatment plant, and maybe someday work on reuse of our wastewater treatment plant effluent longer down the road.
Yeah. Anything else? Yes, sir.
During your Christmas schedule, do you find any material or equipment that has difficulty in making schedules?
Equipment in terms of construction or in terms of procurement?
Procurement.
No. Go ahead, Hugh. I say no, but they say yes.
No, so, yeah, so part of the process that we have done on the program, and then we've taken it into the projects, is part of our scope is risk analysis. So equipment delivery on time and when we need it has been a big one, particularly on the CMARs. And the reason these couple of jobs were CMAR was because of procurement issues. Electrical, obviously you've probably heard enough of that, or we do. In the water business, I'm so tired of listening about switchgear not showing up on time. But early procurement and design was a huge part of getting equipment on time. Yeah, not just materials. Right now, no. We're lucky so far. Couple of our contractors have national, international information for logistics that they've been able to leverage to help us mitigate through the port strikes, through the current tariff stuff. We're actually seeing reports from them on watching how the tariffs are going to affect us. So we've been through 2 port strikes now, and the tariffs is a new one. And right now we're pretty good. The pipeline, we're good. It's almost all buried. The plant, most of our stuff is in country, and I think we're going to be okay on that. So yeah. And the CMARs. So that's a big part of collaborative delivery is bringing the right qualifications for those type people, is bringing them in so they can actually help you mitigate those risks. We do have a few, did you bring those still, Toby? So one thing is Pape-Dawson belongs, this is a shameless plug, but We belong to Water Collaborative Delivery Association. It's an offshoot of DBIA. I know DBIA is really strong up here. I'm a member of DBIA Southwest. I'm also a vice chairman for Education Committee for Water Collaborative Delivery Association. This association provides information for the water industry for delivering collaborative projects. We don't call it alternative anymore because it's not alternative, it's collaborative. Okay, so we have some OA guides here. We call them guides for owners advisors. DBIA on their site also has an owner's advisor, but this is written for water because water's way different than transportation. So anybody that's interested in this, you can certainly pick up one of these. We brought, I don't know, 8 or 10. This gives you a good idea from a program and an owner's advisor perspective, how to deliver projects in the water space. So feel free to grab a couple of those. All right, we appreciate everybody attending.